Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at headmom8.wordpress.com, and I'm back for another weekly live stream. And here's to hoping that this one's goes a little bit better than last week's. Last week's, about 10 minutes in, all of a sudden everything just froze up and I actually had to end the live stream early. So if any of you who were here last week and wanted to get some thoughts into the chat or wanted to talk about some things that we didn't get to because we had to end so early last week, feel free just to talk about that here in the chat. But otherwise, today's topic is actually going to be transitioning from textbooks to relaxed homeschooling. And I think that's a topic that a lot of people really have a tough time with. Not because they don't want to transition from textbooks to relaxed homeschooling, but because it's just textbooks are just so ingrained in everything that we think of when it comes to education. You know, they make us feel safe. They're familiar to us. So when we take on this responsibility to homeschool our kids, the very first thing that we seem to go to is to go right to those textbooks, the way that we grew up learning. And so, yeah, it's really about stepping outside of your comfort zone in order to do this. But, you know, I think that most of us who want to transition away from textbooks. Hi, Dahlia's Roses, how are you? A lot of us who want to transition away from that, we realize that textbooks, they're just not the way to go for learning when it comes to most kids. You know, there are some kids who do okay with textbooks, but honestly, even for those kids that textbooks are written for. Hi, Tanny, how are you? Even for those kids who, you know, are those visual learners and who really seem to do well with that sort of thing, I still don't even think that they would be at their optimum learning experience with a textbook. Hi, Corey, how are you? Hi, Nathan, how are you? So anyway, that's what we're going to be talking about today, is transitioning from textbooks to relaxed homeschooling. And, you know, I think that one of the things that the very first thing that you need to do when you're trying to get away from a mode of learning that is, you know, kind of a habit, it's more of a habit than anything else. So you need to do a few things. And the first one is that you really need to evaluate why you are using those textbooks. Because once you actually come to grips with the realization that you're probably not using them because they're just so effective and they're wonderful, you're probably using them for a number of other reasons. And once you come to terms with what those reasons are, it really does become easier to just let those, you know, let them go, so to speak. So first of all, you know, a lot of people, as I said earlier, they use them because they're familiar. You know, most of us grew up with them. If not all of us have grown up with textbooks, so that's how we equate learning. Hi, Kim from Australia. Nice to have you here. Let's see. Another reason is that people use them is because they are following the public school. Not necessarily their public school experience, but I know that a lot of people who are homeschooling still tend to follow the structure of how their public schools are learning. You know, the order that they are learning. Another one from Australia. I didn't even know that. Wow, it's so cool to see people from all around. I'm so excited to see all of you here every week. So anyway, yeah, so a lot of people will start following the public school that they live near. You know, if their public school does geometry in 10th grade, they do geometry in 10th grade. If their public school does, say, college algebra and trig in 11th grade, they will do college algebra and trig in 11th grade. If they do, say, I don't know, Western civilization in 10th grade and then do maybe like economics in 11th grade, then they will do that. And so I think that's another reason that a lot of people will fall to the textbooks, is because it's just easier to learn those specific subjects when you are doing them in such a rigid way that it's just easier to pull in textbooks, because that's what the schools are doing that you're, you know, copying off of anyway. And also, besides that, I also know that a lot of people, there are state homeschool groups for different areas, and a lot of times they will have a list of things that you should do for high school. And so a lot of people will follow the list that's in the state homeschool group for high school, especially. Sorry, I just have to adjust my pillow. But anyway, yeah, I have to sit on a pillow because I'm very short, or wouldn't be able to see me here. But anyway, but one thing that I really want to talk to you about with the homeschool groups is that I just want you to remember that a lot of times, you have to really look into it, but a lot of times they are just suggesting how you can do it. You don't have to do it that way, just because a lot of times those homeschool groups are also just kind of following along with what the public schools do. And you know, you have to know your homeschool laws, but I'm in Pennsylvania, which is one of the stricter states when it comes to homeschooling, and we don't have to follow things as the high schools do them. So that's another thing is, you know, if you're only doing that because you think that you have to do it that way, look into it, because you might not have to. And that can actually be your first step in breaking away from some of those textbooks. Another reason that some people use them is because their co-ops use them. I know that a lot of homeschool co-ops use textbooks. So, you know, that can be one of those things that makes it difficult if you're trying to break away from textbook learning, but you're in a co-op that does their learning with them. And, you know, it's okay, I think, if your kids are taking like 1 or 2 classes in a co-op, you know, it might not be so bad. But if your kids are taking, you know, like 5 classes in a co-op, then yeah, it might be a little hard to kind of distance yourself from that textbook learning. So that in those cases, you know, you really just have to weigh the benefits of each side. You know, if you really like the co-op community and if you are happy with it, then you might just have to just stay with the textbooks. Otherwise, it might come to a point where you might at least have to just kind of decrease the number of classes that you're taking in the co-op, if not just stop doing the co-op at all. I mean, completely, especially if it's something that didn't seem to be working with your kids anyway. And then the last reason that I have that some people might use textbooks is, I mentioned earlier, it just makes people feel really secure. You know, they're taking on this responsibility is scary. You know, you don't want to mess your kids up. I see that all the time. I'm afraid I'm going to mess my kids up. And let me just tell you, your kids are at home with you, who loves them more than anyone else. You're not going to mess your kids up. You could just not do anything at all with them, and you're not going to mess your kids up. They're in a loving family with you, and that is first and foremost what kids need. So of course, you are always going to give them your absolute best. So I want you to remember that. But yeah, those textbooks can make you feel secure because you don't want to mess up so badly. So anyway, I'm just going to read through some of these comments quickly because I didn't really get to talk to anybody. I got to say hi to some people. It took you a while to figure out what time it was going live. I know, sorry. I forgot to say Eastern time when I mentioned it before. Barefoot in the Country is here. Vicky, Tati. I still don't know if I say your name right or not. Let's see. Woo! I love seeing all of you Aussies here. That's so awesome. This is why the internet is so amazing, because we can talk to people anywhere. It is so cool. You don't have to travel. I'm scared to death of flying. I have flown already, but you don't have to fly around. You can just talk to people like this. Although I'm sure it's different if it's like in real life. But anyway. Oh, you're going from Abeka to Relaxed Homeschool, Dixon Christian Academy. You know what? We use Abeka Math. We really do like Abeka Math. So anyway, let's see. Wildfire Mama of 2, that's my mom's concern. She's scared I won't teach my son enough if we don't do school every day. It just disappeared off my phone screen. Let me see. I just haven't found what works for us yet. Yeah, and you know, it happens because, again, your mom too, she only knows the school experience. And we have been completely disconnected from the way that kids learn. We were completely disconnected from the way that we learn, because it's just like, we get up to a certain age and it's automatically like, okay, you're going to school now, and that's how you're going to find everything out. But before that time, you know, up until school age, kids are so curious. They're into exploring. They are little scientists, like John Holt said. They are natural scientists. They are always learning, always finding things to do. They don't need, you especially know as parents, that little kids do not need adults to help them find things to do. They are constantly getting into stuff. And you know, a big part of the reason that whole curiosity wears off is because, yes, your kids reach a certain age and you send them to school. And so it becomes less of self-exploration, or exploration because they want to, and more about just, you can only do what the teacher tells you to do. That's the only thing that's worthwhile doing right now. So yeah, so kids, they don't have that time and freedom like they used to have. And then that's when you start to hear the I'm boards over and over again. And it's just, they just get to this point where they no longer know how to entertain themselves because they're so used to other people coming in from the outside and telling them what it is that they have to do. So yeah, it can be hard because we don't understand as parents a lot of times unless you have really looked into it or really just watched your kids and, in like an unjaded way. I think that school really jades us to what learning can actually be like. So yeah, I went off on a huge tangent when you said that your mom doesn't get it, but I'm just saying I understand that. I totally understand that people just don't get it. But anyway, so one of the biggest things that you can do, so first of all, after you've evaluated why you are using these textbooks, and if you've come to the conclusion that they're honestly not bringing much to the table in your homeschool, if your kids aren't really thrilled with them, and if you aren't really thrilled with them, and if it just seems more like your kids are just moving along kind of just like schools do in an assembly line sort of way, that's something that you might want to move away from textbooks. And, that's one thing about textbooks is that while they do contain a huge amount of information, I've been reading a book and I know it said that some history textbooks have like 900 pages in them. That is a huge amount of information when you think about it on the surface. But the thing is that history has been around for a long time. So yeah, it's 900 pages, but there's a lot of stuff to cover in that time period. And that 900 pages also includes like, appendices and the index and the glossary and, like a 20-page table of contents. So it's not all informational things in there. And then what ends up happening is you just get little snippets of information. You can't really delve deeply into anything because they've got to cover so much information that you just get little snippets. There's no actual deep learning. So that is really one disadvantage of textbooks, and the fact that they are just written, they're boring. And I did a video a few months ago about a textbook author who basically apologized, saying, I'm sorry that the textbooks that I wrote were so boring. My editors made me do it. They cut out all the good stuff. And that's basically what happens. So that's why I'm hugely into living books. So anyway, one of the basic ways that you can start transitioning yourself out of the textbooks is maybe to just have your child start notebooking through one of them. I don't know if any of you do notebooking, but that makes a huge difference, because if textbooks, usually at the end of each chapter, there will be like a bunch of vocabulary words that they're supposed to look up. And then there will be some review questions, and then there will be like essay questions. And then sometimes there might be, multiple choice. And then at the end of the chapters, then you're going to have the reviews that they have to complete, which are usually like 4 to 6 pages long. And all that your kids are doing in that time as they are filling out this information here is kind of like just going back and forth. They read the question, go to the whatever page it's on, write it down, and then who's to say that they're going to remember it? Or even if they remember it for the test, who's to say that they're going to remember it after the test? Because if you're really honest with yourself and think about it, I would have to say that most of us would agree that the textbooks that we used in school had no lasting impact on our lives at all. Honestly, even like with me with history, I hated history in high school. I didn't do badly in it. I got all A's because I was good at memorizing and then forgetting after the test was over. But I had no interest in it. It was so boring to me. So now that I'm homeschooling my kids and we can do it in a way that actually fits us, history has just completely changed for me, and it's actually one of my favorite things to do. So anyway, yeah, so maybe starting notebooking through them instead of filling out those end of the chapter, pages, at the end of the chapter, vocabulary and questions and all that stuff. Have your kids notebook through the chapter instead. And it doesn't have to be the same sort of thing every day. They don't have to write like a summary of what they read every day. They could do, they could just do a summary of one section, like their favorite part. They could write about one person that they learned about, or one concept. They could do a list of something. They could label a diagram. They could even do like a map. Anything. There are so many different things. But the thing is that when your kids are notebooking, that's more of that deep learning that's going to stick with kids, rather than the superficial learning that they're going to get just from answering questions that have already been phrased to them. Notebooking requires them to make the choices about what they find worthwhile to talk about. So that is one way that you can start transitioning away from the textbooks, is just to do that, because it's going to help you to know that you don't need to rely on them so much. And that is a great first step to start with. I'm going to head over to the chat over here and just see what, because I don't want to like save it all for the end. I want to talk to you in between. So we will see. Tachi, sorry. I keep like getting your name wrong. I feel so bad about that. Let's see. I'm still trying not to be worried if we don't get to finish every lesson. Yeah, a lot of people, it takes a while. It's not something that, boom, right away, you're completely fine with it. It is. It's a transition, getting away from everything that we know, everything that we've been taught about what learning is supposed to look like. It's a process, and it takes a while. Like even this attitude that I have, it took me a long time to get to this point of relaxed homeschooling, where I'm completely comfortable with the way that I do things, because I've actually now had time to see things in action. But I promise you that you will see the fruits of it over time, although it can be scary at first. But yeah, you do not need to finish every single lesson, because even with math, I was talking earlier about how my kids, well, my younger kids, my littles, use Abeka Math. And even for the math, like I think now my third grader, her math is starting to be more of that drill and kill in Abeka, which I really don't like in math. So what I even do with her is I just circle every other problem for her, and she will do every other problem instead of doing that whole page. And then, if there would ever be a time that she really would not understand it, then the next day, rather than tacking it on and making her lesson really, really long and making her hate math, because at this point she loves math, I would rather wait until the next day and have her complete the rest of those problems that I did not have her do the day before. So that is even an option. So if you see that your kids really understand something really well, then you do not need to have them finish it. You absolutely don't. What I usually do is I will see their understanding, and then if you know that they do need to work on it a little bit longer, have them do it the next day. Because we really, as homeschoolers, we need to teach our kids to embrace learning. We want our kids to love learning so that they are not afraid once they are adults to get out there and find answers to things that they want to know about. We don't want them to have an aversion to it. And we 100%, at least I know this is for me, and I'm sure it's for most of you too, if not all of you, is that I really want my kids to get to the point where they are not satisfied with just having people tell them everything. I want my kids to go out there and to look things up themselves. I want them to answer their own questions, because the fact is that you're not always going to get the truth from everyone. So that is so, so important to instill in your kids, is how to seek out information on their own. Let me see. Crossing new bridges of motherhood. I'm all over the board with resources to create our own studies because my kids are all over the board with their interests. Yeah, I know. That's how I feel like I've been lately. Honestly, we've been brainwashed to believe that real learning only happens in school and it only comes from textbooks taught by teachers. Yes, that is exactly what it is. And actually, next week, I'm going to be making a video, Lord willing, I'm going to be making a video about how we have been conditioned from schools to just let other people think for us. So yeah, that's one of my upcoming topics. Homeschool mama of 11. What bothers me the most is when strangers or even family members quiz my kids when they see them and find out they're homeschooled. You know, the only one that has ever done that to us is our neighbor boys. One who lives next door, and then there's another one who moved away. But they used to do that to my kids. And they used to think that because they were in the same grade as one of my daughters. So they would think that because they were learning about something in school, that she would have to be learning about that at the exact same time. I think my cat is scratching. Violet, stop. I think it was they were learning maybe about the Pilgrims or something in school, and we had not gotten to that yet. And so they were asking her all kinds of questions. And so she came in the house and she was like really upset. And I said to her, you don't need to be learning the same things that other kids your age are learning. There's no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you learn it. But I did arm her because we had just learned about, I think it was Kepler's laws of planetary motion that day. So I told her, I said, go out and ask them what Kepler's laws of planetary motion are. So she told me that she did that, and then they actually both went on their phone and looked it up because they didn't know. So, and yeah, I think that if my family members would quiz my kids, I would have something to say to them. So far, they have not done that. So I've been really blessed in that. But I know that happens so many times. Our neighbor once, before we moved into this house, we had a neighbor. He was a little older, maybe like not much older than me, but maybe like 15 years older, 20 years older. And he actually asked, now my kids, my little kids, used to sit outside in the yard reading out loud to each other. And so this is like my 6-year-old sitting out in the yard reading to his younger siblings. But my 12-year-old, well, she's 16 now, but she was 12 at the time. She went outside and he actually asked her if she knew how to read. She was 12 years old, and he asked her if she knew how to read. And when she told him yes, he went into his house, got a book, brought it out, and told her to read it. And he said to her that the next time that he saw her, he was going to ask her about the book. Well, she came in the house and told me, and I threw the book away. I was pretty mad, but usually I have not had to deal with stuff like that. But that one I was pretty mad about that one. Kim Ross said, I get busy and rely on them for independent learning, but I know they can be so boring for my son on the spectrum 14-year-old. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that it does free up a lot of our time if we just tell them, like read chapter 1 and then complete section 1.1 at the end. And, it can help, it can make us think, okay, I can get this done and while they're learning this. But then you also have to think to yourself, is that learning sticking? If it's not engaging them, it's not something that in the long run is going to benefit them at all. So is it worth it then? That's what I always thought to myself. A lot of times I caught myself having my kids do things that I knew weren't sticking, and I knew that they were never going to make a difference in their lives. And that was when I really became determined to start making changes, because this is the time that you really do. Again, you want to equip your kids for life as an adult. And we as homeschoolers have the benefit of letting our kids grow up to be adults and to, again, just be individuals. They're not being educated as a collective. They're truly individuals. And I think that really gives them a great advantage in a lot of ways. Let me see. Vicki Hayes, I'm like, do you quiz all the public school kids you see? That's probably what I would say. Yeah, I would probably forget everything too. The only stuff that I remember from school are those things that I was interested in. And of course, if you're interested in it, that's what's going to stick. So that's why even when it comes to college, okay, and core classes that kids have to take in college, even if it has nothing to do with their major, I'm big with this, especially since my oldest son was in college, because he's like taking all these classes that had absolutely nothing to do with anything that he was interested in. And to me, college is just, it's a money racket. It's a business. I don't even look at college as being about education. I seriously just look at that as being a business, because what other reason would there be that that kids have to take certain classes that have nothing to do with what they're planning on doing, will have no impact on them, but yet these kids have to pay to take these classes? So if they want to get their degree, they're being forced to pay for classes that they don't need or want. So to me, that's what tells me this is not about education. This is about making money. This is about being a business. And that is just one of the reasons that I am not one of those parents who's just going to freak out if my kids don't want to go to college, because I just look at everything just with my eyes wide open, because no, I've read too many things and seen too many things that I don't trust the entire institution. I honestly don't. Anyway, so off of that tangent. Let me see. Okay, Rosie 2 said, I buy a curriculum, but we take days off whenever. There is no time frame for us to finish either. Next year, I'm piecing things together on my own for my kids. That's what I do. And it's like a huge weight off of your shoulders. Let me see. Allison, you said, yes, memorizing and forgetting. One reason I wanted to homeschool is to change this around. Yes, because that's really what it's about. It's not about education. It's just about, teaching kids random facts to memorize. And I think that is honestly just more about teaching them obedience, teaching them about doing what they're told, teaching them about how to become good employees is just by doing what they're told. So, yeah. I mean, memorization, it definitely has its merits for certain things. Like for scripture memorization, of course, I think that's good. Memorizing, the times tables and adding and subtracting. Some things, are really good for memorization. But there are other things that you have to wonder why you need to know all these things off the top of your head. Because, like, for example, like when Charlemagne ruled, why do you really need to know that in life? Unless you're going to be a historian or a professor or something like that. Why do you need to know that? And the thing is that there's no possible way that kids can retain every single thing that they're ever taught. Something's going to go. And the things that are going to stick are the things they're interested in. It goes right back to that again. Let's see. Corey loves history now too. I know. It's just so awesome now. All right. I had one teacher in high school in Brazil who ditched the textbook and spent each class telling us stories about people in history. His was my favorite class. I can still remember some of the stories. That would have been awesome. I would have absolutely loved that. I don't even think they could do that in the U.S., at least not now anymore. Years ago, even when I was in school, I think somebody probably could have gotten away with that, but not now. Let's see. Amy, that's what you're doing with Horizons Math? Yeah, there's no point in making your kids hate math. Cut it in half. If they need more practice, they can just finish it the next day. It's not a race. And I was actually just reading something the other day, and it said that you can honestly, if you wait until your kids are ready for math, don't do it just because you think you have to do it at a certain age. If you wait until your kids are physically and mentally ready to start math, they can actually learn all of elementary math in 8 weeks. So that's why there's no rush for me, none at all. Because once they get it, they're going to get it and it's going to click and it's just going to go smooth sailing from there. Well, maybe not, all through upper maths if you choose to do them, but it's going to be much easier than if you try to force it on a child when they're not ready for it. Let's see. Corey, I'm having a hard time letting them notebook in their own creative way. Instead of telling them what to do, I'm very type A. I still do that too sometimes, Corey. Like their animal notebooks are like completely their own. They can do whatever they want with their animal notebooks. But with our unit study notebooks, what I usually do with that is I will alternate, because I like to give my ideas too sometimes. So like, one week I will let them do what they want in their unit study notebook. And then the next week I might say to them something like, I want you to write a character sketch of any character that you want, of whatever it is that we're doing. Or I'll say to them, I want you to write about your favorite thing that you learned about in the unit study today. Or, but I do that too every now and then. So maybe if you could do it just once in a while, that you could, ask them to do a certain thing, but maybe the rest of the time let them choose. Do you think that you'd be able to do something like that? Let's see. There we go. Yep, Allie's Bookish Life. The whole point of homeschooling your son was to get into love learning. Amen. Yes, yes. Do I have any advice about working your kids' interests into lessons? The library is huge for us. So when my kids have interests, the library is huge. Also documentaries, videos. You look into field trips. Now I know that Karasu the Dreamer, I was telling you how my daughter, my oldest daughter, she's really, really into like manga and anime and Japan and all of that stuff. So I don't know much about that stuff. So then at that point, I knew that I wanted to incorporate that into her learning, but I didn't know how. So that was when I really started asking her for opinion and asking her, what do you think it is that we can do to help you with this? Where do you think that we should go? You know, and she was older at that point. But it's nice that once they get to a certain age, you can start really, really asking them for their input, because they might have a lot of ideas that you would never have even thought of for ways to incorporate their interests into the learning. But for my younger kids, yeah, that's what I mainly do with them. It's just the library is a huge asset to us, and they will watch videos that have to do with their interests. And anytime that they have ideas, they come to me. But they're pretty independent when it comes to doing that. So that's, yeah. Just I know that you don't have any kids yet. So you're probably going to be working at this from like when your kids are really, really little. So at that point, the library is probably going to be really good in field trips. So I would start from there. Let's see. Barefoot in the Country. We had family members quiz our kids our first year during Thanksgiving dinner. I was stupefied. I didn't even know how to respond at the time. I would have been so mad. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing your nature study walks. Looking forward to implementing nature study walks. Oh, we love them. They are so much fun. I'm sad that it's starting to get cold now. I mean, the leaves are going to be changing now. It's going to be really pretty. But once it's cold, I don't know if I'm going to be able to drag myself outside to go to nature study walks. I am not a cold temperature person. I have a feeling that we're going to be watching a lot of nature videos in the wintertime. Tachi said, I love Charlotte Mason, and she believed that education is a science of relations, and it's pretty hard to have any relationship or connections with dry facts found in textbooks. Yes, that's exactly right. And Charlotte Mason had some amazing insights into learning, and I really do incorporate a lot of her philosophies into what we do. Karasu the Dreamer, I have autism and I've learned much more from my interest in anime and science fiction than most of what was taught in public school. Yes, that's exactly how it works. Yes, absolutely. Hi, homeschool honey. Okay, we have complete strangers try to quiz our kids in public and then go on to ask if you're qualified. Oh my gosh, that really upsets me. Let me see. My son has a knack for learning random facts, but they're always based on what he's interested in. Yes, and that's the thing. You know, it's okay, absolutely okay to be memorizing facts and things like that if it is something that is actually going to impact your child. And I totally get that. My oldest son, he's very much like my 18-year-old son. I always talk about my 18-year-old son and how good he is with animals and, you know, naming frogs and snakes and all that stuff. My oldest son, who is now 25, he was the same way. He was 3 years old, and I had a snake book, and he could actually go through this book and tell me the name of every single snake in the entire book. I mean, even snakes that most 3-year-olds have never heard of, like puff adder and European adder and thread snake, and every single one, like I would just point to it and he could tell me exactly what it was. And yeah, that wasn't something that I asked him to do. He was 3. It was just something that happened, probably from me reading it to him so much. So yeah, memorization is a great thing if it is actually going to impact them and it's something that they will, you know, remember or at least benefit from in the long run. Karasu the Dreamer, I've been thinking about all the highly successful adults who are considered failures by the public school system. Yeah. Yes. Edison is one of them, right? Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, many people who were considered failures. And Yeah, they definitely weren't. Um, Heather K, I'll tell you that you can take textbook learning further because the reason we're studying the textbooks is to pass exams. You can absolutely study to the test. Then it becomes all about grades and scores. That's exactly what happens, and then it's all forgotten. Corey said, we are all about interest-led, but I fear they won't know enough required information to get into college if they choose to go. Well, the thing is that I was actually talking about that, and my oldest daughter, she didn't do a whole lot her senior year, but now she did not take SATs. She took placement tests for college, and she did excellently, and she barely did anything her senior year because it was mainly unschooling. She did some things, but she was working so much that it was more about work experience and more about life experience that year. And even, I think her 9th grade homeschool year was the only year that we really were about trying to do things in a textbook way, because that was actually how she preferred it at that time. But after that 9th grade year, we were at that point already, we're very relaxed, and she did so well on her placement tests. And I have got to say that I have read story after story after story of unschoolers who never had a single formal lesson, but got into college and excelled at it. Because the thing is that if you know that you are going to need to know how to do something, that is going to give you the incentive to really try harder than if someone is making you do it just because they're making you. So that's, I'm hoping, is a little bit of an encouragement to you that unschoolers, they don't worry about that stuff, and they excel. Elon Musk, he was an unschooler, and I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of his, but you can't say he's not successful. He was unschooled. So we've got that to think about. Let me see. Allison Kaufman said, our teacher in 5th grade had us throw out pages of our math book. He didn't like the beginning wave of Common Core, like math. Ooh, I like that teacher. I wonder if they would get in trouble for doing that now. Oh my gosh, Common Core. I've been studying up on Common Core because I plan on doing a video on it at some point in the future. It is like far worse than I ever even imagined it would be. It's about data mining and communism, and it's not at all about actually educating kids. It's a pretty scary thing when you look into Common Core. Let's see. Amy said, my son hated history until I ditched using a curriculum, and now it's his favorite subject. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly how I am. That's exactly how I am. I'm just trying to scroll through real quick so I can continue on then. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so homeschool mama of 11. I'm just skimming through here. So don't worry, Corey. I was in college prep class in high school. Or is that, yeah, high school. And once I got to college, I had to take the basic, super basic classes. I was totally dumbfounded. That happens an awful lot. My son was telling me that when he started college that a bunch of his friends had to take like the really, really basic math that you don't even get a credit for. Like, and I think that happens with a lot of kids. Skills to be able to research is more important for higher learning. Yes, yes. And homeschool mom of 11, yes, I'm definitely going to do a video on Common Core. It's just that I really, really need to research it more. It is so complicated. And I just want to make sure that I get it right before I decide to, like right now, I could definitely do a rant video on Common Core, but I wanted to do kind of like a more informational one, because even though as homeschooling parents, we don't really need to worry about that right now, but who knows, who knows if they're ever going to try to make us do the Common Core. And then on top of that, I'm hoping, because I know that there are some people who get to the point where they feel very insecure about homeschooling and decide that they're going to send their kids back to school. And so I'm hoping that if I would make an informational video like this, and there are others out there, it's not like no one else has done it, but at least for people who watch my channel, I'm hoping that it would help them that, if you are going to put your kids in school, this is the kind of thing that you're going to be facing, not, when it comes to actual curriculum that is illegally, if you ask me, mandated by the government. So they got Bill Gates to pay for it, basically. That way it wasn't illegal because he's a private citizen, but it's definitely from the federal branch, definitely. Anyway, Um, Karasu the Dreamer, I read an interesting article on a Christian unschooling blog. It was parents discussing things not considered educational, but kids have learned so much from. Yeah, that's the thing. We get into this mode where we think that learning only looks certain ways, but there's learning in everything. There is learning to be found in absolutely everything. Common Core is at its core communism. It is. That's what Common Core, it actually comes from. They want everyone to, it's about common. That's like the main part of Common Core. They want everybody learning the exact same things. And that it might sound benign, but trust me, I don't want to get into it tonight, but it's not a good thing. Let's see. Barefoot in the Country. I remember being gobsmacked when I saw the government vid to push it. It's ridiculous. I know. Homeschool mama of 11. My sister is a teacher's aide in public school. She thinks Common Core is the greatest, even though she can't figure out how to help her own kids with their homework. It's so sad. You know, I was watching a video about it where one of the people who actually helped to write the math portion of the Common Core, he actually admitted that the Common Core math is not written in a way to make kids college ready. He came right out and admitted it. And yet everybody is still like, oh, Common Core in schools. Okay. So anyway, but now moving on back to transitioning from textbooks to relaxed homeschooling. So we talked about notebooking them. Another thing that you can do is actually just look through that table of contents of your textbook. And I have a link in the description box down below this video. And it actually tells you step by step how you can use a textbook table of contents to create your own curriculum using library books and hands-on activities and videos. And you know, so if you're using those textbooks because they're making you feel secure and they're helping you to think that you're not going to miss anything, that there aren't going to be any gaps, which I assure you there's going to be gaps. Even in, you know, traditional school, there's gaps. There's always gaps. But if it gives you that security, you can always use the table of contents in that textbook, and it will show you specifically what is going to be covered there. And then what you can do is actually go to the library, get interesting books out. And if your child is really interested in a certain part of that book, you know, let them really delve deeply into that section, you know, rather than just like skipping over it like it would happen in a textbook. Like if your kids are really, really interested in the Civil War, instead of spending 2 or 3 days in the textbook on the Civil War, they might spend, you know, 2 weeks reading living books about it, or really delving deeply with nonfiction books about it. So that is the library is just, it's one of my favorite places. And I agree that you have to watch it sometimes, but all in all, it's just a great asset for all of us homeschooling parents. And again, besides the books, Pinterest is a great place to find activities, hands-on activities. Other blogs a lot of times have really good activities. And then again, yeah, videos. And you can even find lists of videos and like that online for free on a lot of the blogs. Also, and I already talked about how textbooks only cover snippets. So yeah, so once you fully become comfortable with replacing those textbooks, once, you know, because even using the table of contents to go to the library and just get other books out, I think that it starts to give you confidence and a newfound freedom in knowing that those textbooks are not the only way that your kids are going to get valuable learning. It's not the only way that your kids are going to be able to get the information that they need. There are so many other ways to do it. So you could definitely use that textbook as a stepping stone to make you feel better. Start with it, but then use that kind of as a stepping stone to just branch off and use it kind of like a guide. You know, just look at it as a guide. And eventually you'll probably get to the point where I don't even buy textbooks anymore at all. Even I used to have friends give them to me because their kids were older than mine, and they would just give them to me when they were done. And I would use them as a reference, and I'm at the point now where I don't even do that anymore. I just tend to go to the library for everything because I've just gotten to a place where I'm confident now. I have seen how it can happen. So, I lost my train of thought. You know, this happens to me every week, right? Yeah, so I'm just, you know, I'm at that place now in my life and with my kids that I I'm less concerned with what other people think about our methods of homeschooling and more concerned with how it's affecting my kids. Because I think that a lot of times we do things because we want to look good for other people. And I was actually talking about this last week in the preschool video before it froze and I had to end it. And I was upset about that because I was so excited about that topic. But anyway, and that's one of the things that we do a lot of times is it comes down to pride. We're doing things because we want to look good. You know, we want people to say, oh, wow, look at what her kids are homeschooled and look what they're doing. You know, so we want to impress people, or sometimes we just want other people to just approve of what we're doing. But the thing is that you have to at some point let go of that, and you have to just be willing to move on to doing things that your children need you to do, things that your children need to support them in their learning, and worry less about what other people are doing or what other people are saying you should do. Like, that's why I always say, like, don't do everything that I say. You know, don't try to copy everything that I say. When I tell you things, it's just ideas. It's just to give you ideas. But no one's homeschool should ever look like a carbon copy of another one, because every family is different. Every child is different. You know, just in my house, I'm homeschooling 8 of my kids this year, and most of them are different. They just learn in completely different ways. So I think that, you know, that's the comparison trap. It's pretty brutal at times, and that can be one thing that will hold you back. You know, it will hold you to doing things in certain ways, like textbooks, because other people that you look at as being successful homeschoolers are doing it that way too, so you think that you should do it too. But again, not everyone works that way. So let me just head over here. Just trying to see where I was at before. Okay, Corey said teaching our kids to actually think for themselves and solve problems is, in my opinion, one of the most important skills kids need and is not taught in public school. Yes, that is absolutely true. They always talk about critical thinking skills in school. And I probably say this at every live stream. I can't help it. But all you hear about is critical thinking skills, critical thinking skills. They're not teaching critical thinking skills in school. Because if they were teaching critical thinking skills in school, they would not be punishing kids who ask questions that they don't like. They would not be punishing kids who end up having a different view of the way things are. So schools actually teach the absolute opposite of critical thinking skills. It's kind of just like this mentality of, don't you worry about thinking, we'll do that for you. You know, that's not critical thinking. So definitely something that I'm passionate about as well. Because I think that's why, you know, some things go on in the world today that I just look and I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is getting into people? People have no common sense anymore. They honestly cannot put 2 and 2 together and get 4 anymore. Maybe that's what Common Core is about, because now people put 2 and 2 together and get 5. Seriously, it's like, where's the common sense? And I think a lot of it comes back to they're trained, they're conditioned to just obey authority, listen to what they're told, and they have to believe it. And then when they're older and in college and you hear them spouting out all the stuff that they learned in school, you know that this is not something that is coming out of their own minds. This is something that was drilled into them for years. So I always go off on these tangents about public school. Coral Johnson, plug for the library is the wife of the library director. If your local library doesn't have what you want, ask them if they'll buy it or ask for an interlibrary loan. Yep, that's exactly what just happened. I went to the reference desk at our library and asked if we had a book. And she said that someone had it out, but it was like a week overdue. But she looked it up and she said, oh, I see there's a new edition of this book, though. So I'll put it on the list for us to buy it. So that was very nice. So I agree. Yes. Sherry, do you have a video on how to notebook? Never done anything like or just reading and video for history and science. I actually have an entire playlist of notebooking. If you just go well, you're on my channel now, but if you go to my playlist, I have an entire notebooking playlist. And also on my blog too, at redheadmom8.wordpress.com, I have a lot of notebooking posts there as well. Allie's Bookish Life, that's what I do. Use the table of contents from our history curriculum. And then we go to the library and get so many books about that subject. We end up spending several weeks on that subject. Yeah, that's the way to go. Right now we are studying Vikings. Use Minecraft to build a Viking boat and created helmets and swords. It's been a blast. I loved learning about the Vikings. We learned about Vikings actually through Beautiful Feet books, but that's living books. And that was one of, I never remembered learning about Viking history. And I for sure remember that I was never taught in school that the Vikings actually had come to Newfoundland, to North America. I was never taught that. So I remember, like, as I was learning about them with my kids, yeah, I learned too. Homeschool parents are learning too, right along next to their kids. I think we homeschool parents must be pretty smart because, you know, we're learning twice, you know, once when we're kids and then as we're adults. But anyway, yeah, that was amazing learning about the Vikings because so much stuff. Kara, I'm a liberal and I'm cautious about what I get at the library. Yeah, you just always have to watch. And that's why I always tell people, just browse through what you're getting. Because you might think that you're getting one thing and then you get another one. Or something else, that's what I meant. Let's see. Wow, I see so many people are getting to, like, ships. Tachi saw a Viking ship passing through the East Coast all the way from Norway. We had a chance to visit a real Viking ship passing through the East Coast all the way from Norway. That is so cool. I want to go on a Viking ship. Those, what are they called? Long ships? They're so neat. Such a great time period to study, I meant. I don't think I would want to live back there, though. It was pretty brutal. Anyway, that is awesome. We got to see the Nina and Pinta replicas last month. So my son was super excited to learn more. That is so neat. I wish that we had places like that around us. Okay, Kim Ross said, yeah, I am at that place too. I only want to do what's best for my son and don't care about what others think. My son is old enough to tell people what he thinks and what he likes learning about. Yeah, absolutely. It's like, think critically as long as it aligns with what I think. Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. Oh, thank you, Casey Joe. I love you too. I haven't gotten to talk to you much lately. Let's see. Allie's Bookish Life said, I was never taught that about the Vikings either, and we learned that yesterday, which I thought was awesome. Yeah. How do you do stuff like math and English with your method? I actually have, if you check out, it's probably on my Homeschooling 101. I've done so many videos. So for math this year, we're doing CTC math for my middles and my older kids. And then for my second and third grader, they're doing a Becca. But like I was saying, now most of the time my second grader, she just does both sides of the worksheet because it's at the point where they don't have a whole lot. They don't have drill and kill on hers yet. My third grader is getting to the point in her math book where since she's older, she's getting that drill and kill, like lots and lots of problems. So what I usually do is I will split hers in half. You know, the problems, I only have her do half of them. If she does them well, she can move on the next day. If she has a bit of a tough time, then we'll just save it, and then she will complete that worksheet the next day to give her some extra practice in that. Now English, for that, we actually, most of our English language arts is done read alouds, silent reading, copy work, and notebooking. That is mainly how our language arts is accomplished. And Mad Libs. We use Mad Libs for parts of speech. I don't actually tackle grammar until high school because grammar is one of those things that it does not take you like 10 years to learn grammar. It really doesn't. So it just, I do it in starting in high school, and then that's just daily grams, and that literally takes 5 to 10 minutes a day. So that is how we do it. My 14-year-old daughter loves CTC math. Yeah, my kids do too. The only thing about CTC math that not my kids don't like, but that frustrates them at times is because they can't go back and like redo a problem if they get it wrong. Like they can redo the entire practice, but Like my daughter today, she accidentally hit the wrong number since, because CTC math is on the computer for those of you who don't know. So she accidentally punched the wrong number in and she pressed enter and then she got it wrong. And she does not like to see when she has something wrong, because although I do not give my kids grades and I don't give my kids tests other than the standardized tests that they have to take, for our homeschool laws. So they see that percentage all the time in math. So that's like the only time that they're ever seeing any kind of percentage. And if my daughter has like, say, a 97%, that totally bothers her. So that's the only thing about, and for my kindergartner, I forgot to say, we're using reading eggs math for her right now. I'm kind of debating though, because I don't know. I got her a Becca first grade, and she had been working in that. And I honestly think that the reading eggs might be, she doesn't do as well. I think to her, it's more like a coloring book, because it's so like cute, like as John Holt would say, cutesy wootsy. She doesn't take it very seriously. To her, it's kind of more about playing. And with a Becca, she kind of took her math more seriously, because it didn't look, it almost kind of looks like a toy, because it's so colorful and the cute pictures. And Becca has that stuff, but it's mainly math on the page. Whereas the Reading Eggs workbooks, it's, like really big pictures. And I was noticing that at first she really did enjoy it. She does enjoy it. She likes to do it. She even asks to do it when we're not doing school. So I might, just let her work in it whenever she wants to, but I'm thinking about just putting her back in the Becca first grade. But anyway. Boy mom of 2, I finally made another live show, late but here. You're fine. Better late than never, right? Let's see. What is Daily Grams? It is actually, if you've ever heard of Easy Grammar, I don't know if you've heard of that. It's by that same author, but Daily Grams it's kind of a review of grammar, and it only takes 5 to 10 minutes, and it has different sections on one page, and there's 180 pages, so enough one for each day of the year. Now, of course, don't freak out if you don't get all 180 days completed. I always said that you can take more than 1 year to finish it. Like the one that my kids are using, it's actually for middle school and high school. So that way, if you don't get it all done in 1 year, it's totally fine. But anyway, it's separate sections. Like one time they might have to combine 3 sentences into 1 sentence. And then the next section down, it would be identify what sort of noun this is. And then the next section down, it would be about doing the capitalizing it. So that's just basically what it is each day. They just do that each day, and it only takes 5 to 10 minutes. And even if it's something that your kids have not learned yet, it's really simple to just sit down and explain it to them, because it's not some really big, long, involved textbook assignment. Corey said, what does your high school language arts look like? Do you require essays and research paper? They actually do so much notebooking that I do not, because their notebooking they cover so many different types of writing in their notebooks. They do argumentative writing in their notebooks, and they do creative writing in their notebooks, and they do research writing in their notebooks. So I don't require it, but it's something that gets done as they are notebooking. And these are a lot of times the things that they are choosing to do, especially my 16-year-old. She's like me. She loves to write. So I remember when she was in 4th grade, she wrote like a 3-page report on Helen Keller just because she wanted to. We were learning about her, but I didn't say to her to write a report, but that's exactly what she did. But yeah, so my high schoolers, then it's grammar, like what I was talking about, and then they do notebooking, silent reading, and yeah, that's it. That's it for us for them. Alaram said, my son has speech delay. He's 7, and I would love any advice to help him with his speech. Have you ever had him evaluated? CTC stand for? CTC math is I don't even know what CTC stands for. Isn't that awful? We've been using it for like almost a year now. I still don't actually know what it means. But I do know that it's an online math curriculum. They do like a little tutorial video that's like a couple minutes long to show the kids what they're doing that day. And then they just do, it's usually about 10 problems just on the computer. And my kids really like it. Does anyone else know what CTC means? Corey doesn't know either. Yeah, I don't know. Karis, you love writing fiction. My son does too. My oldest son, he actually He would like to write a book. He's actually working on a book right now. I am not good with fiction. I have like no imagination. I am all about researching and I'm all about reading, but when it comes to writing, I'm just very much into like nonfiction narrative writing for myself. But yeah, my son, he always has me like proofread his stories for him. And my oldest son, he was in Army Reserves. He was military police. So a lot of his stories have to do with the military, and he gets pretty graphic. And I'm just like, okay, Brendan, I don't need to read any more of these. But no, he does. His imagination just amazes me. Let's see. Coral Johnson insurance will pay for speech therapy. Yeah, a lot of times, because my daughter, she had it. One of my daughters had it when she was 3, but you know, she was really little, so I didn't know if her insurance covered it because she was, or no, she was 2, and then she turned 3, and then they told me that they were going to stop coming to the house. They had been coming to the house once a week to work with her. And then once she turned 3, they said now she was too old for them to come to the house. I was going to have to start taking her to their facility, which was like half an hour away. I was going to have to drive her there. But they said that they didn't even think that she needed it at that point anymore. But yes, they did. Insurance did cover that for her. But anyway, it is 11 o'clock, and I think that I am going to end the live stream. I just want to thank you all for coming. I'm always so excited to interact with all of you. I hope that I gave you some ideas on how to break yourself free from those textbooks, because once you do it, you just breathe a sigh of relief when you realize that, you know, there are so many ways that you can learn that are actually going to be engaging and fun, not just for your kids, but for you too. So anyway, I hope you all have a great night. I will see you next week, Lord willing. I will see you next week. Not sure what the topic is going to be about yet, but if you have any ideas, just let me know. And you have a good night.